You're going to have conflict. We should never feel guilty or ashamed because we have conflict from time to time in life. It's just part of life. Having conflict is not the problem. The problem is avoiding conflict. That's where the problems come. Hello and welcome to Christ Church's Leadership Podcast in the Wesleyan tradition. I'm Charles Kyker, your host. Today, we're continuing in our series. Again, I had a chance to be with Craig Rochelle several weeks ago, and I'm sharing some takeaways from Craig that I'm also pairing with our one-year Bible readings. As a spiritual discipline, as a leader, I try to ground myself in the one-year Bible reading, and today it comes from Judges, and it's a powerful passage. And today I want to talk to you about avoiding conflict. That's one of the habits we've got to break. We've got to break the habit of avoiding conflict. A lot of times we think, well, hey, it'll work itself out. Hey, we'll just be nice and be kind to people and it'll work itself out. Rarely does that ever happen. In fact, often, in many cases, the conflict gets worse or even has the potential of something blowing up or going off the rails. So embracing conflict, going to the person, working things out. All of life is about relationships. And if you're around one human being very long, you're going to disagree about some things. You're going to have conflict. We should never feel guilty or ashamed because we have conflict from time to time in life. It's just part of life. Having conflict is not the problem. The problem is avoiding conflict. That's where the problems come. And here in our text in the book of Judges, we see that Gideon, who was a very strong leader and did contribute overall to the kingdom of God, there's some things that are mentioned here that are kind of between the lines. So we're just looking at a few verses here in Gideon chapter 8, verses 22 to 27. But then the Israelites said to Gideon, "Be our ruler. You and your son and your grandson will be our rulers, for you have rescued us from Midian." But Gideon replied, "I will not rule over you, nor will my son. The Lord will rule over you. However, I do have one request, that each of you give me an earring from the plunder that you collected from the fallen enemies," the enemies being the Ishmaelites, who all wore gold earrings. "Gladly," they replied. So they spread out a cloak, and each one threw in a gold earring that he had gathered from the plunder. And then the weight of the gold earrings was 43 pounds, not including the royal ornaments and the pendants, the purple clothing worn by the kings of Midian, or the chains around the necks of their camels. Gideon made a sacred ephod from the gold and put it in Ophrah, his hometown. But soon all the Israelites prostituted themselves by worshiping it, and it became a trap for Gideon and his family. That's the story of how the people of Israel defeated Midian, which never recovered. Throughout the rest of Gideon's lifetime, about 40 years, there was peace in the land. This was something that happened to the people because they went from having a strong leader, Gideon, and the people came and said, "We need a ruler." They were saying, "We need a leader." And Gideon, I think, impulsively or naturally said, "Well, you need to trust and you need to have God as your leader." Well, now that's true. That's true. However, what Gideon did not sit back and do, I think, is that Gideon did not sit back and say, "Well, let me pray about this and seek God first, and to see if God maybe had a judge or a leader in mind." Because the reality of it is people need to be led. And there need to be strong leaders in our world and in our culture. And when there's not leadership, you have what you had in Judges, where everyone did what was right in their own mind. There was not a clear leader. After Moses, God selected Joshua. After Joshua, no leader. It was just the judges. And that's hence the first chapter of Judges. Everyone did what was right in their own mind. And so therefore, no leader was named. What happened, and if I can summarize the next several chapters, Abimelech rose, who was one of Gideon's sons, and he was power hungry. He was not rooted spiritually in a fear of God, a love of God, and a love of people. He loved power. He loved himself. So he wanted to lead. He had 69 of his brothers killed, if you don't believe me. The man was horrible. He was horrific. Had 69 brothers taken out. And so Abimelech ruled. And so the question is, could this have been avoided if conflict had been embraced? Decisions could have been made. Conversations should have been had. We may think that issues will resolve themselves, but they rarely do. A great book on having conflict resolution or having crucial conversations is by that very name. It's called Crucial Conversations by Joseph Greeney. We've heard him be presented in the Global Leadership Summit, which is one of the reasons I was with Craig not long ago. And Jeff Greeney is kind of the major editor. There are other contributors to the book, Crucial Conversations, and it's a great read. And he also shared in a wonderful presentation for the Global Leadership Summit. But here's some things I just want to share with you of how to address conflict. First thing is change your mindset about conflict. Change your mindset about conflict. A lot of us are conflict averse. And for good reasons. We don't like conflict. We don't like to feel that someone may disagree with us, or we don't want things to get stirred up. But we need to change our mind about conflict. We need to run towards conflict, in fact, because it's important for us to realize that conflict can actually deepen relationships if it's healthy conflict. If you're married, you have conflict. If not, somebody is in some serious denial, unhealthy denial if you don't have conflict. When I was a senior in high school, I taught an old women's class, and they wanted to honor me my senior year in high school by throwing a graduation party for me. It was a beautiful thing. And so I was surrounded by older people, precious older people. And one guy came up and said, well, thank you for teaching my wife's Bible class. And I shook his hand, and he said, we've been married 40 years, and we've never had a cross word. How do you, at the age of 17, tell a man that you think that he is living in a fantasy world? Or somebody was silent all those years. If you live together in any relationship, you're going to have disagreements. You're going to have conflict. The question is it healthy conflict where you have healthy ground rules? When you have debate, when you have disagreement, you treat each other with respect and honor? Or is it mean-spirited? And do you attack each other? And do you win by any means possible? And so when I do premarital counseling, I talk about the fact that you're going to have fights. And there's a couple golden rules. First of all, never hit below the belt. Never hit below the belt. Never bring up things that someone has shared with you in true confidence and in a very vulnerable place in their life. And later you bring it up and put it in front of them in order to win that argument at that time or to shame them. Never hit below the belt. Never hit below the belt. Never engage in name calling. There's no reason for that. Never engage in name calling. And I learned from a very young age that trying to share with my wife once that she was acting like her mother, that's name calling. Never do that. That is wrong. Don't do it. Name calling is not just four-letter words. It can come about in other areas. Dr. David Seamans from Asbury says this, talking about changing our mindset, having healthy conflict and engaging in healthy conversations. He says the only way to deepen a marriage, the only way to deepen any relationship or friendship is to resolve conflict. When you resolve conflict and somebody knows that you care about them enough to work through a situation, you'll deepen that relationship. You just will. B, see problems early and resolve them quickly. It's B or number 2 if you're taking notes. See problems early and resolve them quickly. John Maxwell said this once, and he nailed it. He said that conflict is a lot like cancer. It's a lot like cancer. John said, quote, early detection increases the likelihood of positive outcome. Early detection increases the likelihood of positive outcome. Don't be afraid of the conflict. Be most afraid of unresolved conflict. Unresolved conflict can come back to bite you later and hurt the relationship. C, or number 3, is a willingness to hash out issues and walk out with a unified spirit. Hey, the other day when we were together in staff meeting, or the other day when we were working on something together, you said something very sarcastic, and it was like you were trying to communicate something without addressing. And can we just talk about that? What's going on in your life? What's happening right now? I took care of an issue yesterday. I called someone up on the phone, addressed an issue that I didn't want to get out of hand, talked to the individual, and just wanted to address something and ask a question, get clarification, so we could resolve any potential conflict. At that moment, it was not out of order. At that moment, nothing had gone awry, but I saw the full potential for it. And if I didn't address it and we didn't have an honest conversation about it, I could see where stuff could go sideways. So I just picked up the phone, made a phone call, and asked the person about the situation, and we talked about it. And, we didn't schedule a golf game that afternoon. He didn't take me out for supper that night, but we had an honest conversation. And I think he saw where I was coming from. I certainly saw his heart, wanted to honor his heart in the situation, and wanted to see what we could do in the future. But I wanted to get to it right away. So we need to have a willingness to hash out issues and then agree to have a unified spirit. When you get in a team meeting, when you get in a nonprofit or a for-profit or a church situation, agree to disagree, agree to have pushback, agree to have conflict, because sometimes the best ideas come to the surface if you have an environment where people can give their full opinion and not feel chastised because they're disagreeing with the leader or they're disagreeing with something that you've done or you're planning to do. But once you come to some agreement, then you go out with a unified spirit. And as a leader, it's important to try to make sure everybody's heard who wants to express themselves around the table. And just for clarification and for future reference, you have to almost go overboard to try to give the introverts in the room a chance to speak, because the extroverts suck up all the oxygen in the room. And so sometimes it's healthy to say, all right, we've heard from so-and-so and so-and-so. Now let's just go around the room. For those of you who hadn't had a chance to say anything, what's your input in this? I think that's real important. All right, talking about a willingness to hash out, Henry Ford is attributed with this saying, if you do what you have always done, then you'll get the same results. That's largely true. However, if you always do what you've done in the past and you keep doing it and you're doing it for long periods of time, you might be tired of it. You might max it out for its potential. As my dad used to say, son, we've milked that cow all we can. We need to go on to the next one. And, he grew up on a dairy farm. The idea is that sometimes we need to think about different results or different possibilities. Being successful sometimes means changing things. So there are two things, though, that are very dangerous that I want to mention when it comes to leadership. One is being static at what you do, doing the same thing again and again when the results are no longer getting you what they have in the past, or it's not taking you to where you believe God is calling you to go or where you'd like to go. So be careful about being static. The second thing that can be dangerous is being erratic. We have to be careful about being emotionally driven or doing what seems cool and not taking into consideration our mission field, our culture, or giving ourselves to some runaway idea without really assessing it. Being erratic. Oh, all right, that seems cool. That seems like a good idea. All right, well, wait a minute. If we thought through who that's going to impact, if we thought through the best way to carry that out, and are we giving ourselves enough runway so that when this plane takes off, we can get the height and that we need to be able to have a successful takeoff with whatever initiative it might be. What we should do, not be static. Be careful about being static. Be careful about being erratic. But number 3, be intentional. Be most intentional. There's another side to doing what you've always done. It's not necessarily static. It can show greater growth over time. You spend a year investing in leaders. You spend a second year investing in leaders. You spend a third year in internship and investing in interns. You spend a fourth year investing and mentoring. By the time you hit your 5th or your 6th year, suddenly your internship ministry explodes. Suddenly you've got younger people who have had positive things to say to other younger people, and because you've been intentional about making this the best internship or the best mentoring program it can, suddenly it has multiplied. So there is something about doing the same thing you've done, but doing it intentionally, asking yourself on a regular basis, are we doing the best that we can with who we have, and are we taking people to where they need to go? And that intentionality can pay dividends, huge dividends, even multiplication over time. This past Easter, Christ Church had over 6,000 people in worship. Last year we had 5,000. We set a goal to break 5,000. We actually did, praise be to God. This year we didn't set a goal. This year we just said we're just going to make a commitment to go all out and invest in relationships. Many of our staff called people on the phone and thanked them for who they are. We prayed with them. We had various methods of contact, social media. We hit 6,000. When I saw people in worship at our Mountain View campus, where I had the chance to preach on Thursday night, Friday, and Saturday and Sunday, I saw faces that I haven't seen, but what was beautiful, the hairdresser who I'd gone to and that I had invited years ago to attend church, and she cut my hair several times, came up to me Easter Sunday with tears in her eyes and saying, I accepted Christ today. I prayed the prayer to receive Christ. Thank you for inviting me all those years. I finally decided to come today. And she was there again this past Sunday when we baptized collectively 33 people at all of our campuses, and we baptized 21 at Mountain View, but she was there for the baptism, and she wants to consider being baptized herself. So, and then there's another young lady I've been working with over the last 4 years who's been trying to get direction in her life, and she's been scared to death of being hurt and broken by men and abused by men in her life. And she was baptized this past Sunday, received Christ, prayed the prayer to receive Christ as we did our orientation. And so I guess what I'm saying is intentionality, consistency, investing in people, loving people, and then sharing that kind of passion with other people, and then going to the conflicts when they happen, addressing them so that you can build up your team and not allow outside forces to tear you apart or tear you down. So one habit that's good to kick is the habit of avoiding conflict. Thanks for being a part of our podcast today.